Thank you for tuning into Climate Change Cheddar. I am Travis. This is my sign that I want the autofocus to... Oh my god. Today we are talking about glacier melt and sea level rise. So every Thursday I like to do a deep dive into climate change related topics, so go ahead and subscribe to the channel if that's the kind of stuff that you're into. I'm hitting glacier melt and sea level rise in the same video. When you have glacier melt, you have sea level rise. It's just how it works. So the first question is, why should we care about glacier melt and what exactly does it mean for us? We should probably start off by talking about what exactly a glacier is, because a lot of people actually think that they're icebergs. Those are not the same thing. A glacier is a gigantic mass of ice, and it moves extremely slowly across the land. They're the things that have shaped our modern landscape and form most of the valleys and lakes and mountains that we see on Earth. These type of glaciers are usually referred to as alpine glaciers, and they're on every continent on Earth, with the exception of Australia. So just to give you a perspective of how many glaciers there are on Earth, 10% of Earth's landmass is covered in glaciers currently. So those are alpine glaciers, and then you have ice sheets, which are often referred to as continental glaciers. An ice sheet's different because it doesn't require a mountain to form, and they cover much more vast areas, like almost the whole entirety of Greenland and Antarctica. That's hard to say. Those are the two types of glaciers. Now it's important to understand how they're formed before we get into why they're melting. It's pretty simple. They form when more snow accumulates than what melts. Snow falls over time and it becomes more densely packed, and then the bottom layers below that become even more densely packed. When the ice grows thick enough, it fuses into a dense ice mass, which is known as glacial ice. So what's happening to these glaciers and their ice sheets? They are melting. They are disappearing into non-existence, or they are melting at a rapid rate and shrinking due to man-made climate change. So first and most importantly, when ice sheets melt or icebergs melt, they fall off in massive chunks into the ocean in a process known as calving. Why is this bad? Because it causes sea level rise. Why is sea level rise bad? Well, first and foremost, the world's coastlines are in direct danger from sea level rise. In places like Louisiana, you have dangerous combinations of subsidence, which is causing the coast to sink by about 3 feet a century, along with rising sea levels. So when you have the land that is sinking and you have sea levels that are rising, that combination is deadly. More than 100 million people around the world live within 3 feet or a meter of the mean sea level. Bruce Douglas, a coastal researcher at Florida International University, he calculates that every 2.5 centimeters of sea level rise could result in 8 feet of horizontal retreat of sandy beach shorelines due to erosion. Higher sea levels are coinciding with more dangerous hurricanes and typhoons. They move more slowly and they drop more rain, which contributes to more powerful storm surges that can strip away everything in their path. One study found that between 1963 and 2012, almost half of all deaths from Atlantic hurricanes were caused by storm surges. So now that you know why sea level rise is bad, let's get into exactly how bad it can get. The most recent special report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that we can expect the oceans to rise between 10 and 30 inches by 2100. So if you're brand new to climate change, let me explain it very quickly so that you understand this next part better. Climate change is like a freight train that's already left the station. When you pull the brakes on the train, it doesn't stop immediately. It still takes a long time before it slows down. Even if we stop all emissions today, and even start sucking carbon out of the atmosphere, we are still going to be experiencing the effects of climate change for quite a while. So our goal right now is to limit the effects of climate change. You can't just snap your fingers and overnight it's gone. Experts are expecting that the sea levels might rise between 10 and 30 inches by 2100. Even if we meet our warming goals. Another analysis based on NASA and European data skewed toward the higher end of that range, predicting a rise of 26 inches by the end of the century if the current trajectory continues. This isn't some political news pundit just giving, bullcrap information out there. This is NASA. NASA doesn't have an agenda, they have data, and that's what they are predicting. They are predicting a possibility of a 26-inch sea level rise by 2100, even if we meet our warming goals. So what's the scenario if all the glaciers melted on Earth? This is where it gets a little bit terrifying, I think is the right word to use. If all ice that currently exists on Earth and glaciers melted, it would raise the sea level by 216 feet. Not 26 inches, 216 feet. That would cause entire states and entire countries to disappear underwater, say goodbye to the entire state of Florida. So to be clear, that's not a scenario that's likely to occur, but it does show you just how much water is trapped in these glaciers and what could happen if climate change went unchecked. If that doesn't make you want to wake up every day and do something about climate change, then I don't know what will. Another recent study found that rising seas could cost the global economy $14.2 trillion in lost or damaged assets by the end of the century. It could also raise the amount of people that are experiencing episodic flooding from 171 to 287 million. So that's the number one reason why it's so awful that glaciers are melting, but let's get into some other reasons. The next biggest problem is probably the fact that glaciers are made of fresh water, the ocean's made of salt water, and when you have the two of those mix, it affects ocean currents. Less salt in the ocean disturbs the Gulf Stream, and it changes the weather that we experience on land. So we directly experience more extreme weather on land because of glacial melt mixing with ocean water. With more fresh water in the ocean, salt water is sent deeper down into the ocean, which can also affect the saltwater's temperature, and these changes have negative effects on animals, plants, and habitats that rely on specific conditions. The Greenland ice sheet is currently the largest contributor to sea level rise, and it's melting 4 times faster than it was in 2003. I'm shooting this video in 2020. That's only 17 years, and it's melting 4 times faster than it was 17 years ago. A recent study just came out that actually said that the Greenland ice sheet is melting at a much faster rate than we even thought previously. So this new study is saying that these ice sheets are going to melt at a rate that we haven't seen in 130,000 years if we do business as usual without mitigating our CO2 usage and methane usage. This is another statistic that blows my mind. So between 1992 and 2017, Greenland and Antarctica combined have lost 6.4 trillion metric tons of ice. So in just 25 years, 6.4 trillion metric tons have been lost from Greenland and Antarctica. Just for reference, earlier in 2020, weather stations recorded the hottest temperatures ever recorded in Antarctica. So getting into the final reason of why it completely blows that glaciers are melting, it is albedo, not libido. So albedo is a measure of how reflective a surface is and how much light energy is either absorbed or bounced back into space. So something that has low albedo, think of black asphalt in the summer on a hot sunny day. You can just touch it and it's hot to the touch. On the other end of the spectrum, you have high albedo, and the highest albedo surface of anything on Earth is snow and ice. Some parts of Antarctica reflect up to 90% of solar radiation. Like I said, albedo is not talked about very much, but it's something that's helped to keep the Earth's climate in check for millions of years. So it's pretty common sense, but the more ice that you have, the more light's reflected back into space, and the less ice that you have because of melt, the more light's absorbed, thus increasing temperatures. So just to recap, the 3 main reasons why glacier melt is so bad for the planet. A, you have sea level rise. Sea level rise is going to be displacing millions of people. It's going to be killing lots of people. It's going to change the face of the planet literally, and it's going to cost trillions of dollars to dig ourselves out just from the damage that's being caused by sea level rise. Next, the ocean's currents are going to be thrown completely out of whack from having trillions of tons of fresh water being dumped into saltwater oceans. It's going to throw off ecosystems, and it's going to create more extreme weather conditions that we experience here on land. And last but not least, albedo. Whenever you have these massive glaciers and these ice sheets melting, it is causing the Earth's surface to be less reflective, which is thus causing more solar radiation and heat to be trapped by the Earth instead of reflecting it back into space. So not only are we fighting CO2, we are also becoming less reflective, so the Earth is warming all around from glaciers melting. So what can we do about it? I mean, it's really easy to throw your hands up in the air and to get scared and to be nervous about it. And that makes logical sense. If you're not nervous or scared about it, then there's something wrong with you. If you're a younger person watching this video and you have a mind for science and you haven't chosen your career path yet, get into climatology, get into the earth sciences. You can actually get into glaciology in specific colleges, or you can just become an earth scientist and have a focus in glaciology. That is a perfect way so that you can grow up and study glaciers for a living, study everything about climate and what's causing glaciers to melt, and make that your daily job. If you don't have a mind for science, then get into photography or get into making films. You can become a documentarian. You can go out to Antarctica and to Greenland and to all these amazing places around the world before the glaciers melt and capture them. The reason that we're able to see what's happening with glaciers is because of people like that do go out there and take these photos and take these videos and allow the rest of the world to see what's happening. I watched a documentary, it was about a year ago, called Chasing Ice. I think the documentary is from 2012, but even though it's 8 years old, it's still terrifying. And now we have much more information that would make it way scarier in 2020 than it was in 2012. His team and his work are what enabled most of the world to see the current glacial melt that we're experiencing. The photography and the videos that he and his team have taken have inspired a whole slew of people to go out there and to start documenting through photo and video glacier melt on a you have artistic and then you have scientific, and sometimes the two of them can be combined. And last but not least, just do what you need to do as a human on this planet. Educate yourself, try to lower your carbon footprint as much as you can, vote, put pressure on companies that you know aren't doing their part. Don't listen to somebody that tells you that you don't have power as an individual with climate change, because you do. If you put the pressure on companies and you stop supporting companies that aren't doing their part for climate change, and other people follow your lead, and then eventually you get thousands or millions of people to follow that lead, we are only going to be supporting companies and brands and people that support climate change, know that it's real, know that it's happening, and are actually doing something about it, instead of being more harmful to the environment than what we've already been experiencing. So individual actions do make a difference. The pressure should not have been thrust upon you. It's not your fault, like oil companies like to tell you that it is. They just like to displace the blame for you. But it does take all of us to make a difference. They need to do their part, and we can do our part along the way, and we can support the people that are going to be helping us to do that. So anyway, that was another deep dive topic on climate change. Subscribe to the channel to see more of these, to see more eco-friendly product reviews, see some crazy eco challenges that I'll be doing along the way. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.